Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
I'm Sarah Fensky. Give STL Day kicks off this Thursday. More than 900 local nonprofits will be asking for assistance that day in what's become an 8-year tradition for St. Louis. Last year, more than 35,000 individual donors raised nearly $4.5 million. There's a complete list of projects that you can help fund at givestlday.org. But the project here at St. Louis Public Radio has special resonance for many staff members, and that includes, in full disclosure, me. That's because the whole thing began in some ways with a conversation on this very show. And joining us now with more of the story is the station's midday host, a voice you probably know quite well. That is Greg Munteanu. Greg, welcome.
Hey, thanks for talking about this, Sarah.
And we're also joined today by Ken Buchholz. He is the director of the Audubon Society at Riverlands. That's in West Alton. Ken, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Ken, it was almost exactly a year ago. We discussed on this show the Lights Out Heartland Project and also the Bird Safe St. Louis Project. Give us a sense, what dangers do birds experience from light pollution and from windows?
Yeah, well, first off, you have to think about where we live. And in St. Louis, we have the responsibility, but also the privilege of living along one of the most productive migratory bird corridors in the United States, the Mississippi Flyway. So in spring and fall, when birds are migrating, we have millions of birds moving up and back and forth through our area. And so light and glass can really can be troublesome for birds for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, so the main issue is sort of a confusion thing with the light?
Yeah, light can cause confusion, and scientists are still not sure why birds are attracted to them and what it's doing. But what it can do is when birds are flying over, light can attract them right into buildings, but it can also confuse them. And they may end up in a situation where they're calling out and they're flying in the wrong direction, and so they're expending all this energy, and then that also can be quite perilous for them.
Okay. And then when you say they're sort of headed towards these windows due to this light, that can be deadly.
Yeah, because they're moving at really high speeds.
Okay.
They're not just sort of floating and like a butterfly. They're going to hit it hard.
Yeah. So, Greg, that is something that, unfortunately, I know you know all too well, and particularly as it relates to this very building we're in.
Right.
Tell me, you first got interested in this back in 2018.
Back in 2018, Shayla Farzan, who is our science reporter, she brought in an injured black and white warbler, and she kept it at her desk in a little shoebox, and told a bunch of us about it, and was able to release it. But we had started noticing these birds showing up dead around the building. So we're trying to figure out a solution back then, but there really, we didn't know what to do. Did a little bit of research, saw that putting stickers on windows was a good idea, but getting the attention, drawn to it, was what we were missing out on.
Figuring out how to take that further. And in the meantime, you were kind of taking some meticulous notes.
We were documenting, taking pictures. I've got a lot of pictures of dead birds.
Because they were hitting the windows here. This is this building, don't want to call it a glass box, but it certainly has some glass box-like qualities.
Right.
That can be a problem for birds.
Absolutely. Glass, it reflects, and what it's doing is reflecting habitat, whether that's sky or foliage, and birds don't see glass the way we do. And so they're looking at that thinking, it's sky or a tree, and they're coming right in.
And Greg, you're a real bird lover. I
I
know.
am.
Not only
I
were
am
you
for a
seeing
very, very long time, since I was a kid.
Yeah, this has been a big thing for you. You were finding these bird bodies.
Yeah.
And you could tell what kind of birds they are. These were migratory
Sure,
birds?
absolutely. Migratory birds like white-throated sparrows, common yellowthroats. Those two are the ones that we saw the most. And just some stats for you on this. This isn't the only problem birds face. Cats are the number one. 2.4 billion birds die from cats. 1 billion birds die a year from windows. Cars take care of 340 million birds. So they've got a lot of, obstacles and trials that they face out in the wild.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be a bird.
It is. It's very tough to be a bird.
Yeah, and so for me, I didn't know any of this was going on in this building until we had this conversation. We were talking about this Audubon Society campaign, the Lights Out Heartland Project, Bird Safe St. Louis. Greg, you came up and kind of buttonholed me after the show.
Well, with the dove.
Yeah, told me about photos you'd taken, told me about the data you gathered. We basically decided we needed to do something about this.
And we did. We did something. That was a year ago.
It was a year ago.
Almost to the day, right?
Took us a very long time, but we gathered together a committee of some like-minded St. Louis Public Radio staffers. We should give a shout out.
Oh, I've got a list.
Yeah.
Shayla Farzan, Brian Munoz, Emily Woodbury, Lisa Costello, Madeline Painter, Maria Bradford, securing funding.
That's right.
Rebecca McBride, Sarah Fensky, and Evie Hemphill, who used to
Our
work
former
on this
producer.
very show, right?
Yeah, and so we were trying to figure out how can we get something taken care of, and that's when we ended up talking to Ken. Ken, you guys come out and do assessments for buildings.
Well, this was our first one. We piloted it, and we knew that it could work. And the reason we know it can work is because these are not complex solutions. Greg and I were talking earlier. We're talking about putting stickers on windows. We're talking about leaving blinds closed and turning off lights for the most part. So anyone can do this at a home or in an office building.
And Ken, you said that when you did this for your building out in West Alton, where you have a large birds populations moving through there, you saw this made a real difference.
We sure did, and we're actually doing a kind of an informal survey, but we are tracking the number of birds that are not striking our windows now, essentially, and we're seeing a pretty large knockoff of birds that have collided. So it works, and what we did was we tested different treatments.
And so what you found is, using these decals, this seems to be what's leading in the right direction.
Yeah, and for us, we even had kids tempera paint some of the windows. And so if you're at home or you're in a school, it's a great project to engage kids in. And they take ownership in protecting birds and their environment.
We actually have a caller who's wondering, and I'm just going to ask this question for her. I think it's a good question. Rita wonders from Crestwood, would a dirtier window be something that's safer for birds? Is that one of the things you looked at when you looked at various options?
I think it has to be something that breaks up. It has to provide a pattern.
Okay.
And
it can't just be a little bit not clear.
Nudgy or smudgy or something like
Right.
that.
I think the info that I've read says that the dots or something that breaks up the reflection has to be about 2 to 4 inches apart, because birds are very maneuverable. They'll fly through to escape a predator, or mainly I think they're just flying to a comfortable place, and they think that they're flying to somewhere they're going to land.
Yeah.
And then they hit the window.
Yeah. So you can't just have a dirty window. Rita, I like your thinking as somebody who hates cleaning my windows. I like that idea. But I think what we found here, and Greg, you ended up finding a company in Canada. What they do is make decals.
Right. Feather friendly. And they're very friendly people. They're very nice. Talked to a man named Paul Grollo, who is the president, I believe. And, he walked me through the whole thing. And we did some research into other companies. This one, All About Birds, or American Bird Conservatory, right?
Conservancy, yep.
Conservancy. Okay, they have a whole list of different vendors of these stickers. And Feather Friendly was at the top of the list. They're a little bit more expensive, but usually, you go with the one that is the the most effective. So they had a high rating. So that's where we went.
And so for GiveSTLDay.org, St. Louis Public Radio is asking people to contribute to this campaign so we can get these window decals on our windows and stop these bird strikes. If you want to know more, we have a video up. That's GiveSTLDay.org/STLPR. We've already raised more than $3,000 for this project. We should mention we have another $5,400 in matching funds. If you give soon, you can get in on that and double the impact that you're making. Greg, this is an issue that has been so important to you. I know you're really hoping that people can step up here.
I am. I'm hoping that we can be an example for people in Grand Center. I really want this to spread out across St. Louis. There are a lot of new buildings going up, and a lot of them, you can go on Twitter or you can go on any of the socials and see all the new buildings that are going up in the area, the plans, and they're all glass, so it would be really nice if folks would keep birds in their minds when they're doing this. Architects, think about it out there, architects.
Think about the birds.
Right.
And so, Ken, this is, as you said, this assessment was the first that you've done. You're hopeful that this project could be a project that leads to others throughout downtown, throughout Grand Center.
Yeah, we're certainly exploring that, and we're also looking to connect that to St. Louis Audubon's Bird Safe program, so there's continued follow-up. But I think the most important thing is to do what you all did. See the problem, figure out how to solve it, and to get folks like us involved. And often with anything, you find out the solutions are there, and they're often pretty easy to implement.
Mm-hmm. So if people are having bird strikes, say they're part of a commercial building, and they're noticing the same sort of thing that Greg kept noticing here, what would you recommend as their next step here?
If they're in a building, I really love Feather Friendly, and there's other companies like them, and they have really tremendously good information, and customer service is really high. And they'll work with virtually any size. I think, Greg, you said someone's working on what was a big building in New York they're working on right now?
Oh, the World Trade Center.
Right.
Is when I talked to Paul last, right? They were working on World Trade Center buildings, yeah.
So the scale can go really large. But then, starting simple, work with your building managers and get lights off at the appropriate times. Really simple to do, and break up, windows with patterns, even if you don't have a feather-friendly product.
A lot of buildings have timers, so you can just set the time to lights out, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, even the Gateway Arch is going dark for the next 2 weeks. It's great to see this kind of attention being paid to this issue. I think for so long, people just thought of bird strikes as a fact of life. There's nothing we can do about it. Ken, that's just not the case.
No, it's exactly not the case. There's so much we can do, and it can happen in commercial, residential, and our building, and so on.
1 billion birds is a lot of birds. So to make a small dent in that, to me, we got to work at it in steps. We've got to try, though.
Yeah. So we're going to ask you if you can go to GiveSTLDay.org/STLPR and make that contribution. We say it's Give STL Day, but you can do it really anytime this week. It's already live. You can go ahead and do that now. If you give $25 or more, you'll receive, as a thank you, our STLPR Bluebird tote. That was also a part of this project.
It's a nice tote.
Yeah, it's a great tote.
It's got a little bluebird with some headphones on it.
Yeah. So this is like the radio bird, right?
I saw the logo. I thought it was great.
See, we need this to become our new mascot here. And we should mention also, while you're at GiveSTLDay.org, you can check out other projects too. 900 local nonprofits participating. More than 400 of those are micro-organizations you may not be familiar with. You can just browse through the list of projects. New this year, they also have a category of the Black-led benefiting sector. There's 14 organizations there that are Black-led, if you particularly want to give there. So, Greg Munteanu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And Ken Buchholz, director of the Audubon Society at Riverlands, thank you.
A pleasure.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Thank you for listening. I'm Sarah Fensky.
Today's episode was produced by Sarah Fensky with audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr. Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.